I'm a pattern recognizer. That's what I do, right? That's why I play music. That's why I do jiu-jitsu. That's why I cook. That's why, I do tech. Like all these things I do, it comes from pattern recognition and then finding like the context behind it and the underlying fundamentals.
Coming to you from the Cloud Gambit studio, this is your host, William. And with me, my co-host, the cheesecake crafting queen of the South, Yvonne Sharp. How are you doing today, Yvonne?
That would be me. And I cannot quantify the number of cheesecakes I've made in my career, but now I can no longer eat dairy. So cheesecake is completely a gift. I make cheesecakes. I can still make it, but I don't get to eat it. So
I've had one of them and it was very good. It might be one of the best cheesecakes I've ever tasted.
It's not just the cheesecake. It's the homemade raspberry topping with the chocolate drizzle. Yeah. Anytime you're near Louisville, Kentucky, and you want to go for a scenic drive, let me know and I'll make you cheesecake.
All right. Just so you know, my birthday did just pass and I don't recall getting anything from either of you.
Oh, okay. If you're ever in the area, let us know.
You're on the Christmas card cheesecake list now. Well, and so I got to introduce our guest. So with us, we have a very special guest, Tim Banks. So first of all, how are you doing on this beautiful Monday? I don't know if it's beautiful in Austin. You're in Austin, right?
I am, and it is gorgeous. Okay. So we've, we have survived the Texas summer, and we've had our first full week, like in the 80s. My air conditioner turned off at least twice yesterday, which is, that's a monumental time. But I'm doing well. It's sunny out. It's clear. It was breezy. The morning started off in the 50s and it was wild. Finished celebrating my birthday week, concludes today, like a week from my birthday, and had a great time yesterday, with some friends and one of my partners. And it was just, I've been having an absolute blast. Probably, actually, no, I deserve the good time I've been having. I'm gonna be honest about that. I've been pretty good. So was
there good food involved?
Oh yeah. We went to a little Italian place. It's kind of newish here in Austin. It's called, I'm not getting sponsored by it. The place is called Casabianca, right? It was so good. They've got, kind of like, it's in the same style as you're seeing popularized here in Austin and other places. Like you just order it and they bring it out kind of random, as you order whatever. There's no sense of like an entree and stuff like that. Family courses, Kona made to share, things like that. It was so good. It's absolutely fantastic. And then we finished off with just a monstrously sized and delicious, mille folle, I think is what they call it in Italian, 1,000 leaves, whatever it translates to in Italian. It's like imagine a croissant as lasagna, but it's a pastry.
I'm intrigued.
I'm really hungry now.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, no, it's delicious.
All we've done is talk about food.
I know. I'm really hungry. I actually haven't eaten anything today because I'm kind of doing this intermittent fasting thing. So I'm like starving.
Okay. I love how you're kind of doing this intermittent fasting. You either do intermittent fasting or you don't. Because if you don't do it, you're not doing it. Like it is a binary state in that way.
I do. So I wish I was more consistent with it. But right now, what I'm doing is 3 days a week. I do one meal. I just do like an early dinner. And I like doing that. But the thing is, I can't do it on the days that I'm doing sports or like doing anything like really active, or else I get into like the pass out. I'm going to pass out your kind of phase.
I learned very quickly that I cannot myself do intermittent fasting when I do jiu-jitsu, and other people at the gym, everyone has their turn of like, oh, I'm going to do this. And then they wonder why, like, they're like, did you choke them out? Like, no, they just fell out.
They just ran out of steam. Not enough protein today.
That is it.
Yeah. So I noted down that restaurant because I've been in Austin, usually like Austin or Dallas for work. And I think at some point in the past few years, the last time I visited, actually, I was talking to someone and I hadn't been in Austin for a while, and it is like blown up. It was, since the last time I'd been, it was just crazy. And then the person I was with had said something. I think they said it is like the fastest growing major city in the US over like the past 5 years or something, like year over year.
Yeah.
And it's a great place for food.
It has become a great place for food. It was always pretty good, and it's a lot of stuff has come in here, but it's in this weird space where it's not a New York or a Chicago on the level of food. And it's, like the Pacific Northwest and like West Coast, like where a lot of influences came from, they have proximity to the sea, which helps them out a lot. Austin's landlocked, so we have fantastic barbecue. The Mexican food is off the chain, but like for these other things, they're still trying to find the right culinary niche to fit in. There's an incredible amount of talent, incredible amount of vision. They just need to find the right thing that says this is Austin cuisine, and that's more than barbecue. You know what I'm saying? So they're folks that are doing great stuff. I'm excited to see what comes of it. But it's not quite there yet. Kristen Nish, I think her name. They were on Top Chef about 10 years ago, and then are now one of the hosts on the Food Network Top Chef, and they just won an Emmy, and they're based here out of Austin.
So, that's cool. Before I forget, happy belated birthday, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm in my last year of my 40s, and I'm already planning my 50th birthday party just because it's going to be like, hey, why not?
The big one, yeah.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, for sure.
I know y'all have plenty of years left, but before you get there, but when it happens, it'll be fun.
No. I'm 1 year behind you, so we're getting there as well.
I read somewhere recently, I guess, it was one of your bios. I can't remember. I think it might have been LinkedIn, but that you started out kind of just your whole, I guess, career in the U.S. Marine Corps, and I think your specialty was avionics.
Yeah. So I started off in the Marine Corps, as my first job, and it was funny because I joined the Marine Corps to be in the Marine Drum and Bugle Corps. I actually auditioned for and made the Marine Drum and Bugle Corps at the headquarters at 8th and I as a percussionist. And I was going to go there. It was going to be great. I had a couple buddies that were there. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go play drums for the Marine Corps. Woohoo, right? Wear the red uniforms, something like that, blah, blah, blah. Took my ASVAB, went to boot camp, and in boot camp, they're like, hey, bro, you're at.
By the way. By the way.
Yeah, like you got a perfect score on the ASVAB. So we're not going to let you play the drums, bro. We can get any idiot to come in here and play the drums. So they put me in. First, there was going to be like an electronics tech or something like that, and then that's testing. I swam well. I don't get motion sick or anything like that. So great, we're going to do avionics because we might need some flight navigators. So switched me in boot camp to avionics. I had the option to get out too. I could have gotten out or I could have just taken that. So I went in and just got a little bonus, little promotion. Woo-hoo-hoo. But did avionics, and it's interesting learning avionics in the Marine Corps because you basically get equivalent of an associate's degree in electronics, but with a crusty gunnery sergeant yelling in your face the whole time. And if you ever need to learn how to assemble a box of parts into a radar while wearing a gas mask, that is the place to go.
I will say, like I know a lot of young people who are, either struggling with where to go or what to do with their lives, or they don't have a ton of family support, or they didn't have a lot of discipline growing up, and they're finishing high school and they don't really know what they want to do. And I know so many folks for whom service made their careers. It gave them not only experience, but connected them to mission and a peer group that was life-changing. I think it's a great path.
I think it's interesting and nuanced because I joined the Marine Corps during the Clinton era, right? The Clinton era wasn't devoid of war, and I certainly saw more than I wanted to see, but still wasn't. We weren't still involved in that much. Now we literally just had an entire generation of our youth involved in a war, 20 years plus, and still, I don't know that I can make that recommendation anymore. I'm gonna be real honest. And I know I have friends that either didn't come back or came back greatly altered in not a great way. And so my question is, to get this foothold at what cost? And the cost is great in the Marine Corps or in any of the military. And I just don't know. There's got to be a better way. Yes, sure, it can be if that's the thing you want to do with your life, but it shouldn't be your only option if you don't have supports like that. So, and so, yeah, like I would encourage kids, especially now that the internet is a thing and there's an avenue, if you want to get a career in something, there are ways for that, to get that kind of instruction without having to go. And like I said, I'm not, if someone is really passionate about doing it, then yes, please go do that. But if what I don't want to see is kids going there because it was their only option. Because that's not a great way to be. It's not.
When you did go through, did it have like a positive impact on you transitioning to tech, or did it have any impact there?
Oh no, total. I got hired directly out of the Marine Corps because I had that electronics background, and to be sure, right. For me, that was the right move. But it was at great cost. I do not. This is not the day for me to get into like everything in it, but it's a lot of it. It was a great experience, but a lot of it sucked. So I don't know, I don't know where I would be without it. I certainly wouldn't be where I am. So for that, I'm grateful. But yeah, we have to do better. We have to do better than that for people who want a career, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And it's kind of one of those things too, where I think I've seen some advertisements here recently where they're, enrollment and everything is like so down that they're trying to get more creative with how they get folks to come in. So it's sort of I don't want to say desperate, or maybe it is desperation because you have to have people. But yeah, just know what you're doing, be educated and talk to people that have been there, I think is another good thing, to inform your decisions, I guess.
I think there's this interesting thing, and this is something that I think translates very well into tech that we see, is that companies with a lot of resources tend to make really dumb decisions, right? And companies with not a lot of resources tend to make really dumb decisions, but for different reasons, right? Companies with a lot of resources make dumb decisions because why? Why not? What's it going to hurt them? Right. And companies who don't have a lot of resources tend to make dumb decisions just because they didn't have enough or the capability or access to information to make good choices. Right. But then companies that are more thoughtful and everything like that haven't gotten too big, they tend to, you see those ones who are smart, they're making good choices because, they have that culture of perpetuating good decisions and informed decisions and stuff like that. And they haven't gotten so big that they don't really suffer consequences for anything that happens. Right. And that's kind of like what that ideal size is, I think, for a company, when a company does something exciting. This company is new. This company is great. They're doing smart. They're making an impact. That's usually when they're at that size. Right. I feel like maybe our military, and this may not have been what you wanted to talk about, but here we are. I feel like maybe our military maybe suffers from the first of having way too many resources, and then they're preying on the people who suffer from the second one, which is not enough resources, and the two combined don't make good decisions together sometimes. And maybe it's like, maybe if we made them more agile, like literally more, let's cut back, let's run lean, let's figure out, if we don't have all these resources, what do we have to do?
That sounds like it makes a lot of sense to me, but yeah, I'm no expert there. But yeah, I mean, our government and the military, it is, we're just huge. And it seems like, the government just gets bigger and bigger and more money gets poured into, some of the same programs without the programs maybe changing so much. But yeah, I don't know really what the right answer is. But one good segue for this conversation, and one thing that I definitely wanted to touch on was, I've followed you on Twitter for a while, and I can't remember when I first heard about, I think you were on a podcast, honestly. I think it might have been one of the Duckbill Group podcasts that you recorded with Corey, but and I hope this is an okay observation, but you do a pretty good job of being someone that doesn't let your job or the company you work for sort of define you, if that makes sense.
No, it does.
And you and you have a ton of experience across many, really like a lot of big vendors, some startups, and even I think you have some enterprise companies thrown in there as well. A wealth of experience. Um, can you give us a brief? Because like one of the things, it's not just the companies that you've worked for, but you've actually worked in a lot of different, like a diverse amount of areas, like whether it's database, like Linux admin.
Yeah.
And that's where I grinded on. And, when I got my start, it was all Linux all the time, managing Linux servers before we had fancy tools to manage fleets of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you sort of evolve from that? I guess some would call that like traditional infrastructure, but you've really, and I actually just sent Yvonne an article today. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, Yvonne, but it was about how in tech you have to basically, to stay relevant, you have to learn new technologies and you have to keep chugging along. Because if you stay stagnant, you're essentially gonna have a hard time getting a job and keeping a job, which is a good thing and a bad thing, I guess, because you want to keep learning, but it also at the same time you want some stability without being forced to have to go into multiple areas. But can you kind of give us a sort of a background of how you pivoted from that traditional infrastructure, the Linux admin, Tim Banks, to really a community presence, a DevOps presence, an open source presence? You're everywhere. So how did that sort of happen?
I mean, the ridiculously practical answer is money. But there's more nuance to it than that. But no, I chased the money because that's why I'm here. And it's interesting because you talk about like me not defining myself through whatever company I work for and stuff like that, is because I'm literally only here I'm here for the money, and I can be bought, right? Well, actually, I take that back. I can be rented. I can be leased, but you can't buy me. That's a better way to say it, right? But I would look at what was in demand because that's what was paying the most, and what was also within my capability of learning the fastest, right? And if you notice, a lot of the things that I put, go from like, system admin, Linux admin to database admin. That was because as a Linux admin working for LAMP web hosts, you had to do Apache, you had to do the Linux operating system, you had to do cPanel, you had to do a ton of MySQL, right? You had to learn PHP and Perl and all these other, you had to learn WordPress, you had to learn Drupal and Joomla and everything else that folks were using. But the two things that were always present, right, and on those systems were always Apache and MySQL. And when nobody paying a lot of money for Apache admins anymore, right? They're paying money for MySQL admins, right? But so then you get into like databases and data structures and how data works and in and out and optimization and things like that. And then you like, oh, well, what else runs data back and forth? And well, it's just no SQL stuff. So, jumping into some MongoDB as it comes up, and then working MongoDB, and then like, working in shops. It's like, oh, well, DevOps, all these. Well, so you're a Linux admin and you do databases. So here we have a state store. We're going to do all these CI/CD tools. So here you go. This is yours now. Because I wasn't a dev, but I knew how Linux systems work. Now this is just a new Linux system to maintain, right? But then you learn like, these softwares and stuff like that, and it goes into, it moves that way. But the thing that is interesting about that, and the thing that I will say that I am good at, is the particular syntax or the particular implementation of whatever technology is very relevant to me. It's the process. It are the things that this is what we're trying to do. This is how you understand the problem. We're trying to do this, and we want to do this, and we're going to do this, and this is how we're going to do it. This is how it's going to help us. This is why it's important, right? And those are the things that you can draw circles around in pretty much every piece of technology that you use. And the things that you can relate one to another make it easier to learn, right? I'm a pattern recognizer. That's what I do, right? That's why I play music. That's why I do jiu-jitsu. That's why I cook. That's why, I do tech. Like all these things I do, it comes from pattern recognition and then finding like the context behind it and the underlying fundamentals. And that's pretty much all of computing. But also it's like some of your personalities. I'm not a developer. I don't have the patience for it. Gosh, I just don't. I code just good enough to get done what I'm trying to do, but don't ever ask me to write something that's going to make money. right? That's just throwing good money after bad. I'm just not good at it. But then, I made this pivot from being an engineer to being more consultative, being a TAM and then a solutions architect and DevRel and back now as a solutions architect, because the thing that I like to do is I like to talk to people and figure out how they're trying to use tech. Like, what are your problems? What are you trying to solve with this tech? Because that, in the end, that's all that matters to me. The tech is an implementation detail, right? What are you trying to do? What do you need, right? What are your actual goals, right? And that's the thing that I think a lot of people, especially in engineering wise, they don't see past, committing to production, right? But they're real life breathing people on the other side of that, on the other side of the computer, in that phone, whatever, who are using this tech to do something trivial, right? Or something dramatically important to a lot of people's lives. And you have to understand why, or you have to understand what they're doing, right? Otherwise you miss a lot of stuff, right? And so the why becomes important to what you're doing. And then when you use the why, the end goal why, to inform that, you can make a lot smarter decisions about what you're doing tech wise to meet those goals, because you have the context behind the requirements. And so the pursuit of that, right, is what's led me to where I am in my career today.
Well, I love where you say the tech is an implementation detail, and I found that to be more and more true as I've grown in my career. That ultimately, that you see enough patterns over time, and they all look the same, even when it's a new implementation. I'd love you to. We talked a little bit about storytelling before we started recording, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how those customer conversations weave together and help build stories to understand and explain the tech. I've heard a lot of consternation sometimes from technologists about, well, it's just a story. But in my mind, it's never like just a story. Stories aren't always false, and stories help us make sense of our world. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about that piece of what you do.
So whenever I like to talk to a customer, and you probably saw this when I came in here, I'm never going to come in here. We're never going to start talking about tech. Never. Because again, I actually don't care. Right. I want to know who you are. I want to know about you. Right. And then I want to know what you're trying to do. Right. Because about you and who you are informs what you're trying to do and how you're trying to go about it. Right. So I'm going to sit down. We're going to talk about, hey man, blah, blah, blah. As you saw, like, I want to see about this cool thing you have back now. Like, that tells me about who you are. Right. Like I sat down and William was like, oh, that's a really cool sign. And then William told me a story about that little sign. And now it gives me a little bit of information about William and who they are, and then how they go about doing things and what things excite them. Right. And so with that, now I can like, oh, that's a basis for me to be able to relate for this person, because, oh yeah, I love that. Or I don't know anything about that. Please tell me this. And that's my favorite thing. I know I'm totally ignorant about this thing. Please tell me about it. And to watch people get excited about those things, I love it. Right. But when people realize you are actually there to listen to them, they will talk. And they're going to talk to you like they're talking, not like they're presenting, or not like they're representing. Right. And then you're going to get what I like to call the real tea. I'm not going to get, I don't want your avatar. I don't want the representative coming. Look, just talk to me. What is actually trying to go on? Like, how can I help? You are here because somebody's holding your feet to the fire sometimes, right? I need to know what you need, right? And if we can do it, great. But I need to know that, right? Because you're going to spit at me requirements that maybe or maybe not requirements, but even the priorities are going to be different once I know it is what you're trying to do, right? Are you trying to make an impact? Are you trying to clean up somebody's mess? Are you trying to do dramatic impact? Is the business in trouble, or is the business great and we're trying to find a way to the future? Like, what is the goal? What do you, when this is all said and done and you're home and you're happy about it, what happened?
Yeah. I know that like all the best salespeople that I've ever talked to or like heard a pitch from or even worked with, like they all have maybe different unique skills, but I feel like something that they all did really well was like storytell. And this is a craft that's as old as human civilization. Campfire style storytelling, especially, and our lovely career of information technology. it becomes really important because, again, we were talking before we hit record, and you're not going to remember that feature pitch, but you will remember a story. You just, they somehow just stick, they stick with you, really. And that's something that I've recently, actually, like over the past year or so, I've had many people reach out and then, just asking basically, how do I get better at storytelling? How do you even begin to go down that, because as engineers, if all you do is like work in code and you have your code base and that is where you're grinding like day in and day out, you're maybe not even talking to humans during the day except for like a stand up. And maybe, I think through the pandemic and everything, there was such a long pause on in-person events, like even local events. And I love local events. And it was hard on me.
They're the best.
But just not having human interaction and not having, it kind of sets you back a little bit. But do you have any tips on how folks can sort of pivot from that product pitching mentality first to more of a conversational story?
There's a couple ways, and let me. I'm going to do this by telling you a story. So KubeCon 2023 was in EU was in Amsterdam, right? Amsterdam is incredibly diverse city, but a lot of Black people there, but pretty diverse. I needed a haircut, right? And usually when I go to conferences, I usually go down someplace and get a haircut there just for the experience. My partner at the time was great at finding me a Black barber in this place in Jordan area of Amsterdam, an old mosque, right? It was an old mosque that had been repurposed into a barber shop that had like a little bar in it, had a little African and Caribbean food truck in it. And it was a place where the African diaspora around Amsterdam gathered. So there was folks from New York City, from LA, from Oakland, from the Caribbean, from all over Africa, et cetera, from all over Europe was all in this place. Cacophony of accents and great conversations and great, food and everything like that. So I'm getting my hair cut in this beautiful prayer alcove. I have to find a picture of something. It's stunning mosaic tile in this thing. And I'm getting my hair cut in this little mirror set up with my barber. His name was Will. I think his name was also Will. And he was from Trinidad. And then I was supposed to have a meeting with Kelsey Hightower, and I was like, I'm selling this place. I'll come up to you, Greg. So Kelsey Hightower walks in. He sits down at this bench, and he and I start talking. I'm getting a haircut. I've got like a hot towel over my face. My mouth is exposed, and I'm having this conversation with him. And and I clear by at least a decade, I'm the oldest person in this place. Kelsey's not far behind, right? And the guy was asking, well, what do you guys do? So we work in tech. Well, what's it like? And so Kelsey proceeds to tell our barber and the listening people about how to relate what we do, right, as developer advocates in technology to the work that they do as people who work on barber and stuff like that. It's like, when you cut someone's hair, you don't just come and decide what you're going to do, blah, blah, blah. You talk to them, you get an idea what they want, how it looks, what kind of, you consider all these factors and use your experience, and then you make something, right? You're making something, right? For this person, and they walk away from this and they want to feel good about what they did, right? And it's like, that's all we do. That's literally all we do, right? We make something that people say they want. We're going to talk to them to figure out what it is. And our job as DevRels are the folks who do the talking and the listening and then convey the thing that folks want to the people who are in charge of actually producing it, right? And to have this conversation in a mosque, essentially, where I'm getting my hair cut, in the middle of Amsterdam with one of the greatest storytellers I've ever seen, right, was it was a life-changing moment for me to really give an understanding of why the work we do is impactful, right, to the people that do it. And so the notion,
I wish I could have been a fly on the wall there. That sounds like an amazing experience.
And with the thing that I take away from that and how this relates to storytelling is that the first thing you have to be able to do to tell a story is you have to be able to relate to the listener, right? You have to speak in a way that they're going to be able to relate to, especially if they don't know what you're talking about, So when you hear me talk about tech, right? You'll hear me talk about tech in the context of cooking or jiu-jitsu or building a house or other things that I've done that people can, if they haven't, even if they haven't done themselves, at least relate to something that is more accessible to them than maybe container orchestration. So find the way to relate to people. Find a way. You want to tell your story for the person who knows absolutely nothing about what you're talking, right?
Yeah.
Because if you can convey the information to them, then you can convey it to everyone.
One of the things that stands out to me about all that you're saying is that you're not talking about speaking to be heard. You're talking about relating with the person that's hearing, and starting with the listener, not starting with yourself. And I think that's a key trait of those who actually communicate well and want to get their message across. They don't start with themselves. They always have an idea of their values, of their beliefs, of what they want to communicate, but they're connecting with a person, and they put that other person or group of people first in order to figure out how to relate. And I think that's a super important reality in what you're saying to call out.
I think what's also important too, there's a lot of people who are used to being listened to, right? I don't have to hear from them, to be honest. We're going to be very honest. The people who are used to being listened to all the time, I don't have to hear from them because I already know what they want. They've already told us, right? There's a lot of people there who are not used to being listened to, or more to the point, who are not used to being talked to, right? And their stories are very important, right? Because they're going to have different perspectives from the people you're used to hearing from all the time. And there's no innovation in doing the same thing over and over again, right? So I want to hear from the person who hasn't spoken. I want to hear from the person who's in the meetings but hasn't gotten to talk, right? Or more to the point, especially if it's a place where they don't really feel good to talk. It's like, hey, let me catch you after this real quick. I got a question for you. And then, hey, what do you think about this thing? Like, you can just for real, just blah, 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 blah. I feel like your insights might be different. Talk to me about it, and just put them at ease and let them bite into a morsel that they'd never been offered before.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, that's just such a cool story, cool place, having Kelsey Hightower there. And I remember when he announced his retirement, I was just like, oh, I hope he doesn't stop tweeting. I hope he just doesn't disappear, because his tweets are just so good. Like, every tweet that he tweets out is like, they're all good. He's just such a good person, as far as like conveying information. And I guess let's see, how are we doing on time? We still got a little bit of time. But one thing I wanted to, sorry to pivot so quickly, but one thing that I love that you do, I just want to fit so much in. But Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, there's many things in life that serve like multifaceted purposes. Sports, for instance, like especially when you're young, they can serve as a springboard for like developing social skills, or teaching discipline, focus, patience, even reducing, taking that stress level down, building your confidence. Like, the list goes on. A lot of these things can, actually serve as a great foundation and support for your mental health, really. And so you're a very skilled and competitive in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think you teach it as well, don't you?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, fingers crossed, I should get my black belt this year.
Nice. That's awesome. And I mean, kudos to you for, just a lot of folks that I know sort of lose, maybe they did something as a kid, or maybe they didn't pick it up until they were an adult, but then they do it for a little while and they just stop, because life gets busy. And I think it's important to have something outside of work, or something that's yours that you can kind of focus on, that you can stick with. It's just something that you love. But when did you start learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and how is it? I imagine it's been a net positive in your life overall, personally and professionally. But
so how
did that evolve?
I've been training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 7 years as of August. So I've been training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 7 years as of August, which is, I've been a brown belt for about a year and a half now. So I rose in the ranks fairly quickly, but I trained a lot. And the thing that I like about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which I think makes it stand out from a lot of other things, is the number of boxes it checks for a lot of people. Like, first and foremost, yes, it is a physical activity. You are going to get out there. You're going to sweat. You're going to do some stuff. You're going to get flexibility. You're going to get strength. You're going to get endurance. Yes, that's a thing. Those are the things that happen, right? It's also a thinking person's game. It is chess. It is very high level, high stakes chess with dire physical consequences, I think, as Joe Brogan said at some time or another. But the other thing it is tied very deeply to like human psychology in the way that the thing that you do more than anything else in jiu-jitsu is you touch other people. You have your hands on somebody. You're making contact with another person platonically, sometimes violently, but whatever, for hours a day, right? So the thing about higher order primates, right? The thing that you see in common with all of them is that they bond by touch. Like, their social circles, they touch, they groom, they do whatever like that. That is how they bond, is via touch, right? They communicate vocally, verbally like that. But when you see them all together, they're all hugged on each other, touching like that. That's the thing they do. That's the things humans used to do in a long time ago. Some other cultures embrace it. Ours doesn't really. We don't touch nobody, right? We shake their hands. Like, maybe we hug family members, stuff like that. But for by and large, we don't touch anybody, right? Not great for your mental health until you realize once you start doing something where you touch somebody on the reg, you're like, oh, this feels great, actually. Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, there, you build trust, you build confidence, you build a rapport with someone, right, that you can't have otherwise, right? There are people, I will go, there are people that will pay $250 to sign up, to go up onto a mat, to have someone choke them within an inch of their lives. And then when they tap them, they're going to stop. That sounds ludicrous. This person was about to kill you, but they're not going to kill you. Why? Because you tapped on their shoulder. Like, that just, it sounds silly, like on its face, but that's exactly what it is. It's a respect and it's a trust that you don't get like that from in any other environment. And when you can bond like that with someone, or someone in the same practice, right? Because you both wear the gi, you both have the belt, you've been to the same thing like that. It's a sense of community that is really hard to find. It's hard to find a parallel for it anywhere else in the world. Wait a second again.
Yeah. And I think sports, especially, like, you can, I mean, everybody needs something outside of work. I mean, especially if you work in tech, you're constantly sitting. I sit all the time, and that has consequences. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, you could go ride a bike, or you could go do other things, but kind of like what you're saying, when you have something, whatever it is, where you can, build that relationship with other people, you're not alone. Whether it's a team sport, well, even I guess jiu-jitsu wouldn't be considered a team. Well, I guess it kind of is a team sport, like not when you're one-on-one, but
yeah, you compete as an individual, you train as a team. The thing about jiu-jitsu, right, that I really like more than anything else is you can't have an ego when you do jiu-jitsu, right? You're going to do nothing but lose for at least your first several months of doing it. You're going to get beat. You're going to get thrown. You're going to get choked. Everything imaginable is going to happen to you, and you're not even going to know what's going on, right? You cannot go into jiu-jitsu with an ego, right? Some people will develop one later on as they get good, but again, it gets checked so quickly, right? I start my day, right, in an earnest struggle for my life with a 300-pound dude sweating into my mouth trying to choke me to death with my own clothing. Like, everything else after that really gets perspective.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. Yeah. And then sitting at your desk or having an email that needs to go out late doesn't seem exactly
not at all. Okay. Yeah, it's
not
fine,
too. Bro. Yeah, exactly.
And it's that level of I don't know that I would call it Zen, but I would certainly call it a perspective on what's important and what isn't important. And sometimes it gets me in trouble because I look at people's like serious situations, and everyone's trauma is relative for sure. But I'm like, oh my gosh, it will be just fine, my guy. I promise. And we'll send out your little email.
Exactly. The work's always going to be there the next day. I promise.
That's it.
It's going to be there. Yeah. So again, kind of pivot into one more area that I kind of wanted to touch on. You have a pretty big voice in the community, and you've had some good opinions over the years in the form of tweets from the ones that I'm referencing about sort of the current state of open source and just kind of community in general. And I know Yvonne's actually been a big staple in the network engineering community over the years. Back when podcasting was becoming cool and popular, she had started. Did you co-host the Network Collective, Yvonne,
Yeah,
or did you
I did.
start it?
I was a co-host. Yeah. Well, co-founder with my partners.
Get it right.
Oh, no.
So, yeah, I mean, both of you honestly have done much more for and with the community than I've had an opportunity to do at this point. So I guess my question to you, Tim, is, how do you see I feel like the community actually coming out of COVID has been really bubbling up in a really awesome way. The CNCF's doing some pretty awesome and amazing things. I've had a few folks on to talk about OTel or open telemetry, and just really awesome things going on there. But also open source at the same time, since is kind of having an identity crisis in some regard with some licensing changes as of late. That it seems like one comes along every once in a while and just lights it back on fire again. But yeah, do you have any thoughts there?
I think it's interesting that you bring up the CNCF in this regard, because I feel like the CNCF started off with a sense of community, and now it's just a corporate overlord, right? It is a vehicle for making money with very highly paid board members, right? That use, the guise of community. I'm not saying it's all smoke and mirrors, but it's certainly some smoke and some mirrors, right? To funnel money into companies doing work to grow the Kubernetes landscape, right?
So the Kubernetes supercar, I guess, the Kubernetes Corvette.
Kinda. And I draw that distinction between something like the CNCF, and then you look at the Apache Software Foundation, which has software that we all rely on. Even everything in the Kubernetes project relies on something in the Apache Software Foundation, right? Everything there is free. There's not a company that's like, okay, we're going to get this, but we're going to get it. It's like, who hasn't used HTTPD? Who hasn't used bind? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like these things are there, and it's a different mindset, right? But is that community? No, I don't know. It's part of the community. Like the open source, it is open source software, but the community is different than the both of those, right? I look at something in the community. The first place I'm looking is DevOps days, right? First place I'm looking is your local user group meetups, right? These are places where corporations can sponsor, right? Then come in, but they're not. It is not thrown by a corporation, right? It is for the user. I want user forward conferences that are there so that the users and the communities like that can get together and talk with each other, not be talked at, not be presented to, not be pitched, right? And that's what open source really is at its heart and soul. It's not a group of people to be sold to, right? It's a group of people who are building stuff for the people for the builder, and then for the community at large, first and foremost. Can somebody make money off it? Sure. Right. Great. Go do that. But it's not sellers and buyers. And that's what I feel like a lot of it has moved towards. And that's why you're seeing a lot of these issues around the, like the licensing and stuff. Like, well, why is it there? Oh, it's, the company has to make money, and we don't want other people to make money, and we got to differentiate. I'm like, look, here's the thing, dog. The company's success is not the community's problem. That is your problem. All right. And if your notion of success for the company is going to be at the expense of the community is not going to take that very much. Right. And it's funny, it was just a few days ago, Elastic switched their license back to say now that they're going to use this other license that is going to be, makes it truly open source because of their dispute about Amazon. Amazon forked OpenSearch, and like, why did we go through all this? What was the end? What I'm saying? Like, for what? And that's the thing I think that's really weird, is that these companies are doing battles with other companies, and they're catching the community in the middle of it for what? And that's the part that I think
Yeah.
that really sucks the most.
I saw that happen really hard with the HashiCorp license changes in the community. I guess it's mainly because I was closer to that community than some of the other communities. And it just kind of like, so many folks were conflicted because there was so many good people on both sides that were impacted. It was terrible to watch unfold.
It feels like betrayal, right? And not just for the people who are of the community, but the people at the company whose job it was to relate to and talk to and get the feedback from the community, because they were not privy to these decisions. Their feedback had part in it. This is all done in boardrooms, right? And those are the people, and we go to bring it back to context and storytelling. Those are the people that should be in the community, right? Before you make these decisions, if you cared about them, right? But if you're going to make that decision and you're not members of the community and you're not getting out there, then don't play in my face telling me it's like, oh, we're so permanent. No, you're not. No, you're not. You never were. Not you. You know, you hire your DevRels, they're part of the community, and they're the ones that are catching all the brunt for this.
Yeah. Do you think the bigger that some of these so I guess they are organizations at the end of the day, whether they're nonprofits or not. I guess like the bigger something gets and the more people that are involved and the bigger board that you have, just the bigger, the more voices and the more, okay, we have more voices. We have to appease this side and that side. Do you think that's when it sort of gets out of control? Because I know that I'm going to be speaking at this upcoming conference that is just the right size conference. Mm-hmm. And it's really community grounded. I don't think they have more than like 300 people that they will allow to attend the whole thing. There's like some, there's a number, and they don't want to go past a certain point because they don't want to lose the spirit of it being about the community. And kind of like what you said earlier, vendors can come and sponsor, but the first event that they did, they had all the vendors in one hall. So you could go in and talk to them if you wanted to, but it was really separate from all the other stuff that was going on, which was really, really impactful. And you really had the best of the community there talking really about valuable things. I think there's that growth mindset though. They think they have to grow sometimes. And I think that's when it gets in trouble.
There is and not to lean too heavily into my politics, but I've said in the past that capitalism sickens everything it touches, right? And I say that in this context because you can have a bright and thriving community, and then you're going to have a board member from a corporation who's going to like, hey, we're going to get on the board, or some VCs are, hey, we're going to get on the board, right? And they turn it into a business because that's the only thing they know how to do, right? And as soon as a growing, thriving community starts to take that turn, it's all over but the crying at that point, right? And I would love to see more communities outright reject corporate, influence on their boards or on whatever like that, or VC influence. Like, no, this should be the community. Like, I want the community members to be stewards of this and to guide this ship. But
kind of goes back to whoever's writing the paycheck is kind of who's going to be making the decisions, if you will.
Yeah.
When that's a question of scale too. I was just going to say, because as your community scales, like it doesn't scale linearly. As the community gets bigger, if you want to do meetups, the more expensive it is to get everybody together, the more coordination and planning it takes, the more organization, the more effort. And so that scale problem is often solved with outsized donations or investments from corporations that expect something, return on their investment. And that's the difficult line to walk, right?
And I think that last part you said is the return on investment, right? Because they look at community sponsorship as a sales opportunity, right? And not an investment in the community. And those things are they can give the same money on the same booth, but like I said, the context for why they're doing it matters greatly, right? Companies and there are some companies there that just support the community because the community should be there. Like, yeah, here, go do this thing. Great. versus ones that want to go there to put a sales booth and to get opportunities and like, okay, we get this and we do this. And then like, if they don't have sales opportunities and they don't get a good ROI, they're not going to sponsor it anymore. Right. And you see that coming out to play whenever the money starts to dry up, like, or whenever times get tough, they kill community sponsorships, right? Because they're not sales opportunities, because it's not an investment. And that's the tell. Right. And so I think when communities, yes, can you scale? Sure. Should you scale? Maybe. One thing I learned about restaurants is like, it's okay to tell people we're full or we can't seat you today. Right. Because if you try to do too much, you're going to lose it all. Right. You can relate the story over and over and over again. Right. You cannot scale beyond your capacity to handle things, especially handle things if, how you go about doing it matters. And if you're trying to have organic growth of the community and keep the community at the forefront and keep corporate out and not make money, maybe you can't scale worldwide, but you have a bunch of little small communities, blah, blah, blah. Hey, you got this little community over here, give it this community over there, get this community over here. Great. That's fine. This is, and the way the internet works today, if y'all are meeting together and they're meeting together, hey, maybe you just have a virtual thing. Maybe you go on a little road show. Maybe people pop in here, or, hey, members of this community are all going to this one big conference, right? Let's have a little user group meetup for these people over here, right? And stuff like that. So find your opportunities, right? But like I said, the more you get into having the same players, right, for the money, that they are not there to help the community. They're there to help themselves.
Yeah. So I've got one last question, and then I'll open up the floor for Yvonne after this. But so it's okay. We're in 2024, and 2024 is going way too fast. So as you see, like, the community as it is today, like in sort of the circles that we frequent, and the state of open source and where open source is today, do you see it as like a glass half full, glass half empty? Like, do you see it trending positive, or do you see it degrading and not sticking to its roots? What is your shake for the future?
I'm going to say right now we're at an inflection point, right? The battle for open source is also the battle for open standards for AI and open access to data, and seeing how these decisions are made, why they're made, and things like that. And the companies don't want to do that. The corporations that are making money, they're not inclined to want to give us access to that information. And it's like, okay, so how do we do this safely, and how do we do this openly, and how do we do this transparently for and with the community? And as goes that, fate goes probably a lot of other things, right? We're in this point where you're having just so much AI generated content that's supposed to feed the community that is just junk, right? Which you and Yvonne and I were long enough in the tooth to know that it's junk. But if I'm just starting out, I don't know any better. I don't know who's feeding me LLM generated crap, and so like, we have to think about not the community in 2025. We need to think about the community in 2035. Like, what is it? What is the thing that we're going to have for them? And that I don't have an answer for that, sad as I am to say, and it scares the hell out of me right now, because I don't know who's going to win on this. And I pitch it as winning because some people are definitely trying to win, and they're trying to make other people lose, right? And it's going to be who's going to conglomerate the money the most in these, large organizations who make money now off of AI, who make money off of this software, make money off of that software. Things are getting, bought up and turned around. Like, not that VMware was a great, bastion of open source, despite what they may say. But once they got bought by Broadcom, and Broadcom said, yeah, we're just gonna make $69 billion from these 350 accounts, which I appreciate them for their honesty, right? But that's not a unique situation. They were just the most out in the open about it. I don't see how that's going to go away. I think that pace is going to increase. Consolidation of like access to training models or large language models, or movie generation or audio generation. And then we're talking about who's going to be in control of what we see and what we read. And I just don't know that I want a corporate boardroom to be in charge of that. So those are decisions that we as practitioners and we as the workers who generate this technology, we have to make. We have to make the decisions, right? Because the people in the boardrooms, they can't do any of this. They don't know how to do this. If they could, they would be doing it. They probably wouldn't want us, but they can't do it at scale. So the decision comes down to us.
Yeah, we've seen the floundering of boardroom bingo, if you will.
Yeah.
Over the past year or two, too, it's been a little bit contentious as well.
Yeah, so. but in the end, we're the ones making the tech. We're the ones deploying the tech. We're the ones who are getting everything networked together. We're the ones who are making the documentation. It is up for us to decide how we work with the context of what it is we're trying to do. And that's the context we need to find.
Love it. Love it. You got anything else, Yvonne? The philosopher of cloud?
Just as we wrap up, I would love to hear your thoughts on for those that aren't heavily involved in community today, that want to be engaged, that want a group of like-minded people, maybe without as much corporate influence, that really want to rub shoulders with other practitioners. What guidance do you have for folks that maybe have a desire to engage in community but haven't done so yet? What would you recommend?
The first thing I would do is figure out where your comfort level is with engaging with other people, and then just like maybe push that like 5%. Right? Go to a meetup. Maybe you don't talk to anybody. Maybe you just go and listen, be seen, hear some conversations, just be a fly on the wall, get a feel for the vibe, for the pulse of that community, and figure out if these are people you want to be around, whether it's this specific technology that you're familiar with, a technology you want to be familiar with, if it's a meetup for folks in a job you have, a meetup for folks in a job you want, just go and check it out. Like I said, you don't have to stay the whole time. You can just eat the free pizza and leave, like whatever it is you want to do, figure out what your comfort level is. If you're comfortable and you're a social butterfly and you just really need to get in the foot, go to one, if you work with someone who is active in the community, like, hey, what's one you'd recommend? What's one, like, who's a good meetup, a good beginner friendly meetup? Because there's some meetups that are just not for beginners, right? It's for, it's like, going to an old head rap thing. Like, you can't just be new to rap and go to an old head rap like meetup, and they're gonna eat you alive, dog. But just figure out the right place, figure out what your comfort level is, and then do what feels right. Because not every community is great. I like to think that most of them are, but they're not all great. If something doesn't feel right, don't do it. Just do something else. Figure it out. But the desire and the willingness to push just a little bit, not a lot, just bump up against what you're typically comfortable with when it comes to interacting with other people. Just push it a little bit, see how it feels, and then go from there.
I love that. That's great. And then your comfort level slowly is going to shift a little bit if you find your community that you're comfortable with and you fit in,
sure.
and the doors are going to open career-wise and many other ways as well.
That's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. We went a little longer than we normally go, but that was okay. This is an awesome conversation. Where can the folks out in the interwebs find you?
So I'm on Twitter at ElChefe. I'm also on LinkedIn. I don't know. I'm Tim JB, I think is what I'm on LinkedIn. If you're a LinkedIn person, I've got a blog at tim-banks.ghost.io, which I don't update as often as I should. I have, it's as someone with profound ADHD, I've got probably about 70 blogs started, and like 4 published, right? But yeah, that's where you can find me, or if you see me out and about, like, come interact with me. I'm happy to talk to people. I have very clear signals if I'm peopled out. And you'll probably, just hoodie up, headphones on, sunglasses on, whatever like that. That's not the best time. Any other time, come talk to me. Right. And also if you want to learn some jiu-jitsu, come down to Austin. I teach private lessons. Well, we can get in on it something. Now, William, you said you wrestle.
I did. It's been a long time. You don't really. It's like riding a bike in some sense, but yeah. I figure we can have a special edition, maybe like a Patreon members only, like one where you come down and you and I will go at it. We'll have Yvonne reffing,
that'd be great.
Sounds like too much fun. I'd get squashed.
Winner
destroy
gets
me.
a cheesecake.
There we go.
Boy.
That
You're
will be
setting
my
yourself up for
contribution to the
success
event.
there.